I have a copy or not?
Do you also need to sign it?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Even two. At least I can sell one.
Today it's
No,
cheaper.
two.
We do negotiate with I already pushed it.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So first, Suzanne for the coordination of the book, and then the organizers for the invite today, and also to propose such a very good topic for after lunch, and also with the three excellent speakers that we have here today. So we're going to be looking a bit of what is the new phase of the energy, what are the new players, the new topic, and what is about sector coupling. So with that in mind, I would like to introduce a bit of why I'm here today. So I work for OlivoENERGY, which is an energy strategy consultant. I'm saying all this because during lunch they asked me what this is about Olivo. So we do see there is a great opportunity and space to put together innovation, regulation, and business opportunity. And that's why OlivoENERGY was born, and this is why we are here today in Europe and in Spain and in other countries doing some kind of consulting service. So with that, last summer, Susanne asked me to write a chapter for the book on disruptive innovation. Before OlivoENERGY, I was with Tesla and with Siemens, working always with energy and smart grid. So I wanted to bring disruptive innovation from the last 10 years, what happened in Europe, together with regulation and innovation, which this is what I stand about and for. So can I have the presentation? I only have one slide, which what I did in the book is to write about 13 innovations that are disruptive. So I won't go through the 13 innovations. It's the second page. Thank you. So these are the 13 innovations that you will read in chapter 26 if you go around that. And we are talking an innovation that happened in the last 10 years. And for me, one of the main innovations that we don't take care of it today, but it really meant a lot, it was the rollout of the smart meters. So the rollout of the smart meters put the consumer into a space that they could have data. There was, at the same time that there were data on the side of the consumer started to be more and more willing to be proactive and to be participant of the electricity sector. And we see today the part of the electricity directive of the clean energy package, some of them are pushing for flexibility and for consumers to be part of a more market-based electricity system. So there are a few more things that happened in the last 10 years that are of interest. One is the political commitment. Suddenly there was a political commitment that there was not so clear commitment on climate change, on energy, and to bring the consumer into the electricity system. Then there are a lot of stakeholders that are changing the roles, and also there are new stakeholders. We have cities that are shaping the future. We have the distribution companies, the TSOs, the retailers, all companies, new companies like aggregators. They are evolving and they are facilitating the energy transition. So this is also something that it was for me one of the major things that have been happening in the last 10 years in terms of disruption. And to finish with something, we have today something that we didn't have 10 years ago, and its innovation is moving so fast, and we have so much data and so much IT capabilities that what we are facing now is we kind of combine many of the things we can do because we have the capability to manage data and to put it together and to bring value for that. And with this being the end of my input, I would like to pass the floor to the three speakers. The first one that will speak is Oliver Garaude. He's a data analyst. Data science. And what I like about him is that he told me he likes flexibility, and he worked with flexibility, but from the CO2 and personal point of view. So I think what we're going to hear from him is going to be very exciting today. Then we will have Remy, sorry for my French, Remy Garaude, and he's representing EDIS, the DSO in France, and he will tell us what is the new phase for distribution companies for DSOs. And finally, Lauren Smith will give us a view from the TSO and from everything he's been I guess, listening on innovation this morning in the platform for IRENA. So he's working he's the General Secretary for ENSOE, and I think we are kind of privileged to have the three of them here with us to speak about the new phase of energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So while I get my presentation up here, maybe I can say a few words about myself so you have a bit of a background. So I represent the startup that is called Tomorrow. I don't know if we can do the screen sharing again so the slides come up. It's a startup that I founded 3 years ago. So you definitely see also on my outfit right now that I'm the startup representative, not wearing a suit in this beautiful collection. I should have taken a tie on, but that's how we roll. So I'm a machine learning engineer, data scientist. I've been doing data for more than 10 years. I definitely understand why people say that data is the new oil. And we definitely tend and will do everything to use that new oil for good purposes. And our purpose, the reason why the company was born, is to figure out scalable digital solutions to climate change. And this is a bit what I'm going to talk about very briefly. So let me put this in full screen. So briefly about the biggest challenge of our time, it's CO2, and I think the previous panel discussed it already. The only thing I will say or show here is the long time series of CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. And every time I see this graph, I'm just shocked by how big this spike is. And it's basically due to fossil fuels getting burned. And the only thing I'll say about CO2 that we should all keep in mind is that CO2 is an extremely inert molecule, so it stays in the atmosphere for millennia. So this means that everything we put up now, our children will inherit it, our grandchildren will inherit it, and this is why it should be considered as debt. And this is why we shouldn't reach peak emissions, we should reach zero emissions, because everything we put out there, it stays, and it's going to impact our future. So what do we do about this? There's an opportunity that presents itself more and more is that people, they care about climate change, they just don't know what to do about this. So it's an information problem and it's a storytelling problem. And data visualization can enable us to tell simple, intuitive stories with this data. And this is what the company is all about. The mission statement is actually pretty close to Google's, if you think about it. It's organizing the world's information related to carbon emissions, making it accessible and widely useful. Any product that will come out in the future will need to take into account carbon emissions, showcase that the product is low carbon, and this is the only way we're going to build a low carbon future is if carbon information is embedded in everything that we do and all the decisions that we take every day. So based on that, we built a first product that is called the Electricity Map. It was built in 2016 and it showcases in real time where electricity comes from and how clean it is. And I don't know if I can showcase a quick demo. I'll try. Up. So this is the electricity system right now. The color that you see on the map basically shows you how much CO2 is emitted for each kilowatt hour you would be pulling out of your electricity plug. So if you were to charge your Tesla, for example, in Belgium, let's look at it right now, basically says that you're emitting 224 grams of CO2 for each kilowatt hour you would use to power your Tesla, for example. And it's 26% renewable, 63% low carbon. The difference is the nuclear, which is low carbon but not renewable. You can see the electricity mix here on the left side. But the really innovative and truly different thing that is happening here is that we take into account the imports and the exports. Those are all the, so I removed this beautiful wind animation. Those are all the small arrows you can see on the map, shows how greatly interconnected the whole European system is, and each color you have on the arrow shows the carbon content of the exchange. Meaning that, for example, right now in eastern part of Denmark, they are importing green electricity, or at least low carbon electricity from Sweden. All of this has been scaled to a worldwide initiative. We don't have all the countries yet, but the only way we could do this is because we're basing ourselves on open data. The ENSOE transparency platform is most of our data on the European side of things, but we built a community of people around this that helped us source code and figure out where all of the open data is available in the whole world. And so each country you see there, there's basically someone that helped us figure out how to get that data. So it's a beautiful example of how you can scale up a whole open source community around this project. And we can talk more about this if it interests you afterwards. So just going back here briefly. So we have more than 100 countries. We've had 700 what we call GitHub pull requests or contributions, basically people coding directly into the electricity map. And it's basically used a lot of places. It's been used by the French energy minister in the latest program of planification of the energy for the next couple of years. It's used in classrooms, in universities, and so on. And there's a lot of people that are not at all from the energy business that come to this place and discover how electricity is produced, and they had no idea. So that I'm really happy about. Now, if you have a company, you have to build a business around this. And just to showcase you the idea we got, this is a time lapse that shows the evolution of the whole system over a year. And what you can see, obviously, is that the countries with a lot of renewable, they start blinking, because when the wind blows, of course, you have low carbon electricity. But when the wind doesn't blow, then you might have a problem, and your backup power is often fossil fuel based, and that puts the color more to the brownish side. So the point is, of course, we need flexibility. Of course, we need flexible systems. But what we're addressing is the CO2 part of it. So basically, yes, if you consume at the proper time, you might save money, but you're also saving CO2. And this is what we built a business around. So we have, excuse me for the jumping around everywhere here. We built an API. So an API is basically a system that enables machines to communicate with other machines. And we communicate to all connected objects out there, the whole IoT world, and tell them, this is how the whole electricity is going to look like in the next 24 hours. This is the time where you should be consuming electricity if you want to minimize your carbon footprint. So your electric vehicles should do that. Your heating system should vary its set point in order to consume most electricity when it's low carbon. Your data center should plan its operations. And so this is one of the things we're doing with the different partners we have. So we're data providers based on open data. We use machine learning to do forecasts, and that's what we sell. And this is only the first part, because the next part is putting all of those things into the hands of the consumer. We have a very good partnership with Berry, which is an electricity retailer in Denmark. And they have just launched a feature now in their app where they're showcasing the carbon content of the electricity in real time and in the next 24 hours to their consumers. And they're basically taking a whole different angle at making electricity appealing again to most people, because right now electricity is something, unfortunately, for consumers is a bit boring. I think if you ask most people, where do you get your electricity from, they don't even know. So they want to change a bit the game and say, what if you could get electricity through an app? You download an app, you change retailer, you subscribe, and then you have a whole different experience. So the relationship to the consumer just changes completely if you look at it that way. So that's a bit of what we're doing with Berry. And I'll show you the next project that we're working on, and that will be the end of my intervention here. It's basically, what if we could have an app that automatically computes all of your carbon emissions automatically, right? And this is going beyond electricity, and it's getting really personal, because we know that the relationship with the consumer is the thing that is currently lacking if you want a proper large-scale energy transition. Just a sneak peek of the beta we have right now at the app. It's something that enables you to discover and learn the difference between the impact of your daily activities. Here I had a couple of examples. This is a plane ticket with a train to Stockholm compared to a meal that you could have, compared to charging your Tesla, for example. And those different orders of magnitudes are not something that are easily understood. So the obvious question is, how do we get this data? The way we do it is that we partner up with different third parties. For example, Uber, you connect your Uber account, and then every time you take a ride, the ride comes into the app. We know how much a ride is based on the number of kilometers, and then we can show the footprint. The same with TripIt, scans your emails, organizes all your trips, your travels, your planes, your trains, and then based on which route you took, which plane it was, we can calculate the CO2 footprint. So we're integrating with a lot of different third parties like those, again, using an open source model where we have a community of people that help us. And in that sense, we are the first solution to give, a bottom-up carbon analysis of your life. What do you do with it? You become carbon neutral. Carbon tax is not there at a rate that is big enough. So what we do here is we're going to tell organizations and people who want to do voluntary compensations to pay through this system. And then we have a vetted list of partners with whom we are going to invest in carbon negative projects in order to redirect all those funds to the most efficient decarbonization scheme that is available out there. That's the end of my talk. We have a beta that is out there that is getting continuously worked on, and if you're interested, please reach out afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really impressive. I try to measure how many carbon and CO2 I'm emitting. As you mentioned in your presentation, if we want to fight climate change, we do have to change the way we use energy and electricity. And for a GSO, a distribution system operator, it means that we have to help in a neutral manner or consumer to be more empowered in the way they are using electricity. And for Enedis, it's based and it's completely, let's say, consistent with what the CER is saying on the 3D strategy. The first D is to decarbonize the way electricity is generating. And if you look at France, 95% of the renewables are connected to the distribution grid. So it's not a challenge, it's a big opportunity for GSO like Enedis to connect and to manage those renewables in a fair way. Of course, keeping in mind that we have to maintain the quality of supply and the efficiency, especially in terms of prices. The second D is the decentralization of this electricity. And we do believe that if we want to fight climate change, something has to be more local. And to be more local, we have to find innovation, a new way of having this kind of, let's say, energy communities. And we are delighted to see that the clean energy package is providing the right framework for local energy communities. And in France, we already have something like this. We call it the self-consumption scheme. And the self-consumption scheme is based on the Linky smart meter. It means that in your neighborhood, we will be, if we are the three of us living nearby, we will be able to share our electricity. If, for example, Yoran, you have a solar panel on your roof, we will exchange, or I will use your electricity. And this self-consumption scheme will help us to be to have a local balance. So local production will be completely balanced with the local consumption. This D for us, this decentralization, is really important. And based on the current project we are running, we can assume that the consumer involved are really, really playing the game. They try to reach this perfect local balance. It means that they are consuming less and they are consuming in a good way in terms of to maintain the balance. They are charging the electrical cars during the night, using the washing machine when it's the right time. This is possible thanks to the Linky meter, and it's a natural bridge to the next D, which is the digital. You mentioned the data, and data are the oil. Of course, they are. That's really important if we do want to have a clear and global understanding on the way we consume electricity. And it's also really important for DSOs. We are a neutral monopoly, so we do have to open our data. We must open them. And if you check at the Enedis open data website, you will see how many data are available for free. The local authorities, the cities, and the citizens are using the data to create new API, new apps, new innovation in order to help the citizen to be definitely part of this big fight. So We are completely playing the game of the 3D. We cannot be alone doing that. We have to work with the TSO. One of the main change or moves, and thank you, Suzanne, for mentioning it in your book. A few years ago, we were talking about DNO, Distribution Network Operator. We are not DNO anymore. We are DSOs, Distribution System Operator, working very closely with the Transmission System Operator in order to create not only a framework, but let's say a spirit to leverage and to speed up the energy transition. We are working together with NSOE and the DSO Association in this TSO-DSO platform. And very soon, thanks to the new energy package, there will be the famous DSO entity. And that's also a very good news for us. We will have this strong entity to work better with you and the other TSO. So there is this famous 3D strategy, and I would like to add one. It's not only digitalization, decarbonization, decentralization, it's also distribution.
Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to congratulate Suzanne, I think, for having put this book together. I want to say that we do have an agenda in NSOE which is extremely hectic and busy into facilitating a lot of things. And it is amazing that you still found the space, Suzanne, to put such a fruitful set of witnesses of this change together into a book. So we are lucky to have Suzanne with us at NSOE. So thanks for having done that effort. I must say I'm also very happy to have been able to contribute to a small piece, very, very small, of one of the chapters, how we see the system to transform. I think Remy has already introduced it. We really see the system becoming a systems of systems, a power system of systems, interacting with each other. The keyword is APIs, sets of data interface which as open as possible. Of course, the TSO-DSO is a particular interaction, as what you say, Remy. We are both natural monopolies, so we have the same logics of open data. We have the same logic of optimizing usage of our system, and in that environment, we do have a specific role to play. I would like to make a few comments also on what I said this morning into this IRENA workshop, where there was a very interesting meeting organized this morning with this launch in parallel to this book of this innovation roadmap. My message was to say it is crucial for TSOs to come now in innovation. I think the low-hanging fruit has been done. We have reached 40%, 50% of renewable into the electrical system. The question which we are raised now is, are you going to be able to cope with 100%? And how are you going to be able? And so here it is a race between an absolute need for the society, because the electrical area is the easiest way to decarbonize. I'm not talking about planes and all that kind of things. And so it's all about bringing these innovations and best idea as smoothly as possible in a system which cannot stop, and making best use of that innovation. And I want to point out what we are working in terms of new innovation on a day-to-day basis here in Europe. I would first like to flag all the effort which have been done so far into integrated system planning. What the people specialists know this as 10-year network development plan, TYNDP. I think we are the only countries in the world which are trying to plan our systems together, taking into account the exact location of renewable in any city, any places of Europe, and to put an economical cost-benefit analysis on every infrastructure. It is unique. It is a challenge every day to make this process working and improved at best. The second element is all these platforms which we bring in terms of market facilitation, intraday balancing. This is a constant fight for bridging real-time with flows and physics into the systems. I think we do have a very heavy agenda right now on that. And then I would call more the disruptive innovation in a way which is not innovation for tomorrow morning, but for 2030, 2040. And here we do see definitely a need to start working much closer with our gas colleagues. NSOG, we do have a lot of exchange with NSOG. So that's, we learn from each other for the moment. We are not yet into doing innovation together, but we are in a phase of learning what do you call a green electron? What do you call a green molecules? How can we compare? How can we make sure that you do not blend green molecules with darker molecules into molecules which becomes green electrons? Because otherwise we are going to fake the system. And I very much like the approach of tomorrow, which is trying to look at that from a prosumer point of view. If I'm a prosumer, I just want to know how much am I decarbonized, whether it's gas or electricity. And so we owe a certain level of transparency to the prosumers from that point of view. So this power to gas is a very, and I would say generally speaking, sector coupling is a very fundamental element. And of course comes all the bells and whistles and smoke and mirrors of digital, which is absolutely a thing to change. And I think the best advocate for that is my neighbor here. I remember when I arrived at NSOE, in the first 300 emails, I received an email from one man, it was him, saying, I just get out of school, you have these transparency things here, can we sit together and check how we could make best use of that? And I know that if I had asked my CIO to develop what he has developed, it would have cost me probably 3-5 times more of what he has done, and it would have taken 3 years more. And I think this is really the dynamics which we see with digital, and that's going back to opening data, in trusting new player into that environment, building ecosystems, relying on ecosystems, business innovation into an alliance, into an ecosystem. It's really at the core of what we want to do. And I think we are always very happy to hear what tomorrow is doing. They don't ask us our opinion of what their app should do. They develop it themselves and make use of our data. That's really the beauty of this win-win relationship. And I must say, I'm using even your new app. I'm a beta tester of that because I am a prosumer. I have an EV, I have PVs, I have everything in my house which is as clean as possible. And I'm looking forward learning how I can better use your apps into the NSOE stuff. So that's really the beauty of the digital. Digital is not about inventing ourselves, but enabling an ecosystem to invent around us. That's very important.
Okay, thank you. So I think I take from here that we have 6 Ds. One is data is oil. We have decentralization, digitalization, decarbonization. We have distribution company as a extra D that Renew add. And then we also have data transparency. For P, we have 2P, platforms, and we have a planning system together. And then we have sector coupling, which I think is going to be the next thing on how we can work together with other sector. And sector coupling is going to gas, and I think it's also going to transport. And when we're facing the new era of energy, we have to take this into account. And then there is an extra D that came at the end, so it's the 7D, which is dynamic. Let's not reinvent what is already invented, but let's use it. So with this input that we have for the 3 speakers, I don't know whether from you, from the audience, would like any questions to go? There are no questions? Okay, so I can go for one question to Oliver. And then when you are thinking about the functionalities of the capacity of the data, how you handle it, and all the sources, open sources data that you bring, how do you picture guarantee of origins and bring it all together?
Guarantees of origin. So we've looked a lot into guarantees of origin, especially in the past 1.5 years, into carbon accounting, what the rules are. And the long story short is that there's 2 ways to account for carbon emissions, and it's even dictated by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. And there's something that's called the physical, like location-based accounting, and then there's the contractual accounting. So basically, it's 2 different ways of saying your electricity is green. They are incompatible. you cannot mix them. And so there's one big problem with the guarantee of origin, which is that it's misleading for the consumer to say that you are receiving green electrons by buying green electricity. The reason is that when the wind doesn't blow, there's absolutely no physical sense. There's no way that you can be powered by wind electrons at that time, right? So I think guarantees of origin is a tool that is here as a renewable subsidy. It's a way to say, as a consumer, I want to be able to incentivize more renewable in the system. Therefore, I want to pay extra for my electricity. But I think it has been misbranded in my perspective into something that just tells you, now you shouldn't care anymore at flexibility. You shouldn't care at when you're going to use your electricity because it's green no matter what. And we've seen that firsthand, especially as a business, because when we go to charging station operators and tell them, look, we can actually help you quantify how green the electricity is and make sure we incentivize your consumers, your customers to use it at the right time, they say, well, the CO2 thing, we don't care because we buy guarantees of origin. It's green all the time, right? So for me, there's a misleading aspect to the guarantees of origin, which is why actually with the electricity map, we've gone into the other paradigm, which is follow the physics, because if you follow the physics and you optimize for that metric, you will optimize for reality. That's really the thing. And if you have two ways of accounting things, that also means you can double count benefits. I can talk about this a lot, but like one example that I usually take is if you are in Norway and you charge your electric vehicle, the Norwegian state will tell you it's green because it's physically green. There's only hydropower in Norway, right? But if you are, on the other hand, if you have, I don't know, a Google data center in Holland that is green because it bought Norwegian certificates, you basically sold the greenness twice. There's one of them which cannot be green, right? And so if you have two accounting systems and you use the one that's good for you to tell that you're green, well, you have a problem there.
Okay, so maybe my question, it did refer to guarantee of origin, but I'm more like stamping. Not with the official guarantee of origin scheme, but stamping on a blockchain means or some other, that the electricity is really coming from your neighbor or the electricity is really consumed but the wind is blowing. Is this something that you see value bringing to this extra stamp on time and location?
Right, so we spent probably 6 months when we started looking at guarantees of origin, figuring out how could we fix this, right? And fixing it basically means if you could issue guarantees of origin at a very granular level on space and time constraints, stamping them and everything, then yes, sure, you will have a good system. But the problem is, as soon as you're having a different way of accounting for things, you have a problem there because you have triple counting suddenly, right? In Denmark, the certificates are stamped, I think even at an hourly level, I think so. So we actually looked at this and whether or not we could build into the electricity map a different view that will show you the guarantees of origin, but you actually can't right now. But blockchain is a good technology to solve this. The only problem is, if you have parallel accounting systems, that's where the problem lies.
Okay.
That's good, we get some questions now. I knew it.
Yeah. No, very impressive. Just one maybe theoretical question, but you alluded to the fact that you can now check whether your Tesla is like so and so many grams per kilowatt hour. But actually, if you charge your Tesla, you're on the margin. Your electricity consumption is essentially the last coal-fired power plant that goes online. And actually, the calculation is quite simple because you have a European integrated system that typically is most of the times without congestion interconnected. And you just look what's the most dirty plant that is running because it's typically the most expensive one. Maybe for gas not, gas versus coal not, and then you just say that's the gram per kilogram, no?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we have actually developed machine learning algorithms that estimate what is the marginal power plant. So basically the one that will power your Tesla. So you plug your Tesla, and then somewhere in Europe, a system will be turned on in order to give that extra electricity. And so we trace it back. We look at let's say, for example, in Belgium, we look at if you increase the consumption level, where does that extra consumption come from? Does it come locally or does it come from a neighboring country? And then you can repeat that, and then you end up, it can even be that it comes from Portugal, right? And in the end, we can then identify which type of power plant generates that marginal electricity. Now, the question you're alluding to is, if you're charging your Tesla, which is the right way to describe the responsibility, like the responsible power plant? Is it the average mix of everything that you get from the grid, or is it the marginal one? And that's a very difficult question, and basically goes into, again, different ways of calculating carbon. You have consequential accounting, basically saying, based on my action, what is the consequence of what I'm doing? A typical example is, if you don't take the plane will leave anyway, so the marginal emission of you not taking the plane would be zero, right? Do you still want to say that it's free to take the plane because of that? Maybe not. So that's more the attributional accounting, which gives the responsibility to, shares the responsibility amongst everyone, right? And the thing with the, I'll stop there, but the only thing I will say about the attributional accounting is that everything, the sum of all the actions sums up to the total emissions. On the marginal one, that is not true, and that's a problem, basically, because if you are charging your Tesla and then you have a dirty power plant that is doing something, that dirty power plant is also emitting, and we will also say that that power plant is also responsible for emitting. So at some point, you're distributing responsibility twice. So it gets tricky, but it's basically the difference between marginal and average. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a technical, yeah, it's very technical.
Thank you. Anna Zvolikevich, actually, I would like to ask two questions, maybe related to each one. First one is about aggregation of data. So we as consumers can use these applications to understand our impact, but as the vision published by the European Commission on the Vision 2050 on climate said that with changing of behavior, and that's what was also discussed a little bit before here as well, we can get the same result without such huge cost. Can you actually assess your own impact? So how actually your applications help to decrease carbon overall, not for each of us, how we decrease our own carbon, but overall for all users of the platform, how you use this data and how you treat this data. And another question, which is related also from the distribution side, and distribution and NSOE is very keen on cybersecurity. So it's also the two-way street. So you open your data, but you create this algorithm, but you also open the ways for others possibly to use and to misuse. And it's discussed a lot, but just in terms of the current topic of decarbonization, how you see it's developing. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll quickly answer on the impact on our platform. It's not something we have yet. For now, it's only geared at the individual level. Later on, we will be able indeed to compute, what are the consequences of your actions for some other people. For now, it's not something we've planned.
Regarding the cybersecurity, it's our top priority. If you look at the Linky smart meter in France, there was already, today there will be something like 17 million of smart meter. It's a lot of data. And Enedis is not Facebook. Huh? We will never sell the data for consumer. And the data in open data, we are making some cosmetics around it. You cannot see your own data on the Enedis open data portal. We try to aggregate them at something like it could be a neighborhood area or a city area, but it's definitely not your own data. And privacy is our top priority, as well as to protect all the Linky chain from a cyber attack. If you look back in time with the old meter, with the RTC modem, it was possible to call the meter and then to get your load curve back. With the Linky meter, it's not possible anymore. We don't want the Linky meter to be an open door to the main system. So now if you want your data from the Linky, you have to connect on a securized portal. So it's it's really a priority, and we take it really seriously. And if you look at the European policy on the cyber package, we are working and lobbying a lot on the assessment on the chain to be sure that they are strong enough. And we also would like a strong European cyber agency on the top of the national cyber agency to be sure that we as a citizen will be correctly protected.
Yes, maybe in complement to what was said, definitely cybersecurity is the main obstacle to spread of digitization into the system. So we have established in ENSOE, for instance, a very clear now data policy between extremely secure, sensitive data, which we'll never share to the outside. The only people we share this data with are obviously regulator, Acer, for the purpose of regulating TSOs, but these are not open data. And open data, which are data, I would say, useful for market participants, for enabling markets. And there is a very fine line between the two levels, because the more we introduce renewable, the more we try to bridge real-time physics and markets, and the more you have to expose information on where your system is congested, and the more you expose cyber-sensitive information at a very high level. And in environment, we should not forget that in Europe we have very hostile neighbors. So we currently work on to synchronizing Ukraine with Europe, or desynchronizing Baltics from Russia into Europe. So you imagine the kind of bilateral relationship without talking the new gas directive on Nord Stream and so on. So you can imagine the kind of complex relationship between us and Russia into this space. So we are, again, we hope nothing bad will happen, but we are preparing at best to protect ourselves in that scenario, and we should not be naive. There are trials every day, and that you read in the press. Ukraine is known to be an area which is extremely active right now on this topic, and we try to be as careful as possible. So on one side, you saw the very positive view here. On the other side, we have to be balanced, and we definitely don't want to jeopardize the European security of supply because of open data and so on. So that has to be carefully managed together with the regulators.
Yeah, maybe a follow-up question on the data question to Mr. Garaude. What type of data would you essentially like, in addition to be made public, where you think you can really make use of that, and you don't see big concerns in terms of cybersecurity and commercial secrets, both from the TSO, but also especially from the DSO side, because I imagine there's a lot to be gained for our transition in getting better information.
Yes, very, very good question. So actually, to step back just 1 second, the data that we're using is basically what power plants are producing at what time, right? And if you want to get a better picture, if you really want to integrate even more renewable in the system, what you need to is be able to say very precisely at a fine-grained scale, both in time and in space, where does the electricity come from? And the thing that we need to increase there, and that's especially actually on the DSO level, is if we can get spatial granularity. Because if you look at a country like Germany, if you look at the TSO level, that's interesting, but if you could go down to the DSO level, and in France it's the same, imagine how interesting this becomes. And it goes, I mean, extrapolate that a lot, and then you end up with even your self-production, right? The production of your own solar panels. If they can be published somewhere public, then you're really able to say, well, at this neighborhood, there's solar being generated, so therefore the electricity is slightly greener because of Mr. X, which is here and generously giving green electricity to the grid. Now, on the cybersecurity part, I think there's opening up the data has several impacts. It has a financial impact because on the data has value in itself, and you're giving up that value when you give it away. That is simply a fact. Then you have more on the security side. As soon as you open up an interface, this means that someone can get in and do something, attack your system from that interface. But it's not the data itself or opening up the data that is the problem. It's managing the interface and making sure it's secure such that someone who wants to get open data doesn't get anything else than open data. That's really the problem. It's not the open data itself, right?
I would like to slightly complement what has been said here, just to show the issue. If you look today, there are information on markets and so on are tightly, for instance, related to flow bays. Flow bays are related to critical corridors. Critical corridors are related to area where you can crash a plane on a substation or a line and create a major mess in the European system. So this is the real issue, which is going to these real-time and spatial granularity is this one. And that is really a complex one. How much can we afford to give to the market for enabling efficiency of the market versus the risk taken in the system? And there is a real risk taken on the system, let's be honest. But you don't know the flow real time. You don't know when is the peak into this specific area of the system.
Yeah, but I don't need to know that. I know the substations.
Yeah, but you will be very critical if you know in the same time the location and the flow. Then you become very strategic into your attack.
To ask the three of you, what are the new players? Any kind of players that you think is going to be more disruptive in the next coming 5-7 years in the electricity sector?
For DSO perspective, definitely the aggregators, the one that will provide flexibility to the grid. They will probably aggregate electric vehicles for sure. They will aggregate electrical boilers in France. They will aggregate, I don't know, pumps from the pools. They will provide a new flexibility. And we, as DSO, we have to help them to shape the flexibility offer. What kind of flexibility do we need? Do we need megawatts doing hours? Do we need kilowatts doing minutes? So we have to help them for that. But definitely on a DSO perspective, the aggregators of flexibility they already are the new players. We have to work with them. Behind this flexibility market, there is a lot of value for the grid, for the consumer, and at the end, for the planet.
So for me, there is two types of new player. The first one is, I would call it the orchestrators, who are going to be the orchestrators of the systems of systems. And that's not a single one. I think we tend to think there is a single person somewhere making this orchestration. It's actually not the case. It's a layer of orchestration. And so here for me, and I'm talking TSO and DSO here in the same boat, is how can we ourselves become as efficient as the Googles and the Facebook to develop multi-sided digital platform? There is no reason why our industry is not able to do that. We must learn on how to develop this kind of platform, because by essence, a grid operator has this role. And the second one is really the actor at the grid edge transaction makers, or I don't know how you call it, whether it's controls or traders, and here it becomes virtual, it becomes real-time, it becomes algorithmic, it can be synthesized as a prosumer, as an aggregator, and so on. I don't know what it is. It's an agent somewhere. And that's where this innovation will come from. The question is, how can we bridge these two worlds? And here comes the regulators and the economist, is we need to rethink our market design. How can we give a good price signal to these people so that location of flexibility, capacity, there's plenty of different signals, but if we don't fix in the same time as we build the platform, the business model, the agent will die on themselves, or there will stay two people, and two people will not be enough for all the innovation which we need into this industry. So there is a business model issue here which we need to solve.
Right, I completely share this view. I think it's orchestrator is one way to say it. Another way to say it is that you need the glue between all those systems to work perfectly. And data is really about that. It's about being able to put this digital layer that goes across all the systems. And we haven't talked enough about the sector coupling, but for me this is, I mean, if you think about where emissions come from, they don't come from electricity in general, right? They come from other places. And so if you want to electrify everything, with storage, with everything, gas is going to be crucial for this, power to gas and so on. And right now, I don't see a player that is completely, you know, enabling, making it so fluid that you can make all those transactions between the different energy forms so simple. Knowing if you get an electron that has gone through a gas turbine stored with hydrogen, electricity, the value chain becomes incredibly complex. So I think the players of the future will be the ones that can understand and be the glue between all the systems. That is going to be incredibly important.
I think we do take a very good final remarks from them, and there are homework to do. So there is innovation, there are platforms, there are willingness, there's going to be cybersecurity, but there are a few issues still to be solved. So that means that we still stay in a sector that is very entertaining, that we can make it CO2 free. So I think the challenge is great, but it's also very fulfilling. So before I say goodbye to the three panelists, I would like that all of you join me in applauding Suzanne for the work she's done for the book, which I think that we wouldn't be here without her effort today. So thank you. And then, thank you, Suzanne. Obviously, to the panelists, great for make a very funny afternoon, and thank you.
Many thanks again to all of you for coming today, to Bruegel for hosting this event, for providing lunch, for providing insights, to Jacques Delors Energy, Jacques Delors Institute for participating, all the authors. So read the book, send us your feedbacks. And also this event was live streamed. It's part of this online training that in 6 weeks in a crash course delivers all the insights that we have shared in the book on the European energy transition. So many thanks to all of you again.